America has always known exactly where its monster is kept. For over half a century, we've drawn a red circle in the middle of the map and called it Tornado Alley. We built tunnels there, we installed sirens there. We thought we had the game under control. But what happens when that monster breaks free from its cage and awakens in a place where no one expects it? April 17th, 2026. The National Weather Service, NWS office in La Crosse, Wisconsin, has just been pushed to the limits of its warning system. In a suffocating 12-hour period, their radar was overwhelmed by deadly signals. The 26 tornado warnings issued were not just a local record breaking all precedent. It was the first, most brutal, alarm bell revealing America's risk map has just been torn apart. The EF3 tornado that crushed the town of Cream wasn't a supercomputer error. It was a bloody gash in the ground, plunging into a state that, in mid-April, should have been shoveling snow, not huddled in dark basements. Why is a land that has always been on the edge of nightmares now receiving relentless onslaughts as if the epicenter had just been moved right under their feet? Before we expose the physical and raw data flaws that authorities are facing, I need to know how your warning system is working. Comment below. What state are you in, and have you felt extreme weather creeping up to your door this year? Mainstream media won't give you the whole picture, so your interaction is the only way we can measure the collapse of this system. 26 warnings in 12 hours is a terrible number, but the scariest thing isn't that a weather office issued so many warnings. It's that this place was never considered the front line, and this is just the beginning. Wisconsin is not an isolated phenomenon. It is a symptom of a system that is losing control. From January to the end of April 2026, the entire NWS warning system recorded a dramatic increase. But what truly chills meteorologists isn't the total number of storms. It's who is bearing the brunt of them. The Chicago NWS office, the agency responsible for the metropolitan area with over 9 million people, is leading the nation in the number of tornado warnings. Let's pause for a moment to understand the true meaning of this data. Chicago was never a tornado city in the public imagination. When a tornado sweeps through a cornfield in Kansas, it's a natural phenomenon. But when a supercell system targets a glass and steel metropolis dot, it's a catastrophic system-breaking event. This isn't simply a geographical shift. It's a violent shift in vulnerability. The risk map is sliding straight into hyper-congested areas, where people live on the 40th floor and have absolutely no concept of a storm cellar. An infrastructure built over decades to withstand blizzards and biting cold is now suddenly exposed to the twisting force of 140-mile-per-hour winds. You don't need the strongest E5 tornado in history to cripple the economy. You just need to throw a medium-sized EF2 into an area with too many people, but too little prepared. If a megacity like Chicago is rising on the warning charts, the question is no longer, what's unusual this year? The real question we must confront is, why is the center of risk skewed in such an unnatural way? And more importantly, what is happening in places that are often called the epicenters of death? To understand the distortion of this year's risk map, you don't just look at where the devastation is. You have to look at where it's completely silent. Oklahoma, Kansas, the Texas Panhandle, the impenetrable sanctuaries of tornadoes. While Wisconsin and Illinois are reeling with dozens of warnings, this traditional core region is experiencing an eerie silence. Mainstream media might look at the decrease in tornadoes in the plains and call it good news. They are dangerously wrong. The monster isn't dead. It just can't find food here anymore. One of the driest winters in history has locked the plains in aridity. Cracked soil means no evaporation. Without lower-level humidity, the atmospheric engine is completely shut down. But the universe's law of conservation of energy is absolute. Destructive power doesn't simply evaporate. When the plains region runs out of fuel, the atmospheric equation will automatically balance itself by shifting all that pent-up energy elsewhere. The danger zone is no longer a fixed ribbon drawn on a map from the 1950s. It's a dynamic risk zone, a constantly shifting target in the turbulence of the atmosphere. If the place that should have exploded remains silent, what invisible force is pulling this machine of destruction elsewhere? The answer to Oklahoma's unusual stillness doesn't lie beneath the ground. It lies 10 kilometers above your head. Here, a colossal river of air flows at over 200 miles per hour. It is the most ruthless conductor of the atmosphere, the one who dictates where peace will prevail and where it will be torn to shreds. An EF3 tornado crashing to the ground is never a coincidence. It is a machine that demands the precise, second-by-second assembly of 4 deadly components: dense, low-level humidity, extreme instability, a triggering mechanism, and most importantly, wind shear. Without this brutal difference in wind speed and direction, the sky would only hold harmless rain. The jet stream is the machine that provides that deadly wind shear and lift. It generated mechanical torsion, bending horizontal swirling air currents into vertical super air defenses. For half a century, this machine operated steadily and obediently targeted the Great Plains. But that system just short-circuited. In the spring of 2026, this airstream completely broke off its historical track. Its extreme curvature pulled the entire deadly intersection out of Tornado Alley. The atmosphere no longer cared about boundary lines. It repositioned its convergence point, violently locking onto states far to the north and east. Science doesn't claim absolutes. The jet stream doesn't permanently shift. But the pattern of 2026 proves a cruel principle. When the upper air currents change position, the convergence zone of death shifts too. The decision of life or death is now forced upon communities never trained to face it. However, the wind at high altitude is only the trigger. The sky still needs fuel, but the high-altitude winds are merely a trigger. To build a massive machine of destruction, the sky needs an enormous amount of fuel, and that fuel is boiling and evaporating from the south. Look at the Gulf of Mexico. In the North American climate system, this isn't just a calm body of water. It's a thermodynamic combustion chamber operating at full capacity. In the spring of 2026, sea surface temperatures in the Gulf will remain at extreme levels, defying all historical records. Basic physics never lies. Based on the Clausius-Clapeyron equation, the warmer the atmosphere, the more water vapor it holds. The Gulf of Mexico is now nothing short of a super-fast pump, relentlessly sucking that invisible liquid into the air. This suffocating, moisture-saturated mass of air is being drawn northward at breakneck speed. It acts like a giant conveyor belt, carrying flammable fuel, traversing thousands of miles. When this water-laden, heat-rich air mass crashes into the frigid airstream, pulled down by the upper-level jet stream, the sky instantly shatters. The Cape Index, a measure of the sky's oppressive energy, reaches absolute saturation. History has recorded this pattern before. During the most devastating super outbreaks, such as 1974 and 2011, the Gulf of Mexico was similarly turbulent. This warming isn't manually twisting individual storms, but it's ruthlessly raising the threshold of destruction to a new level. It's dramatically increasing the probability of the formation of the most dangerous, violent storm environments on a scale far greater than any forecasting model has ever predicted. The sky has officially changed the rules of the game. The pieces are assembling into a guillotine. But the most terrifying question now is America's aging warning system keeping up with this new map? Science calls this phenomenon an optical illusion. In the traditional Great Plains, you can see death slowly approaching from the horizon. You have time to fear and time to flee. But when massive amounts of water vapor from the Gulf of Mexico are pumped directly into the skies of the Midwest and Southern Hemisphere, it doesn't just change the intensity of the storm. It completely alters the monster's stealth capabilities. The extreme excess of water vapor creates HP supercells. The amount of rain that falls is so immense that it forms a dense black curtain, completely enveloping the core of the tornado. The rain-wrapped tornado completely disables human vision. Storm chasers are blinded. Sky watchers are blinded. You can't see death until it's uprooted the trees in your yard. And as if to close the trap, the terrain of this new risk zone joined the slaughter. Kansas or Oklahoma are flat plains, but as the risk map slides east and north, it crashes into dense forests, rolling hills, and neighborhoods choked by concrete. The horizon is completely blocked. Even if it's not raining, you can't see through those walls of terrain to see death approaching. But the most cruel handiwork this new storm environment delivers is time. The unstable air mass from the Gulf of Mexico often needs a full day to gather enough energy, pushing the explosive moment of these super anti-aircraft systems into the dead of night. They become nocturnal tornadoes. Statistics don't lie. Nocturnal tornadoes are 2.5 times more deadly. They arrived in the absolute silence of darkness, disguised by a thick curtain of rain, striking directly at communities slumbering to sleep and depriving them of any last chance of defense. The United States has always prided itself on its weather warning network. NEXRAD radars, sirens, building design guidelines, all shaped over decades. But there's a fatal flaw. The entire system was designed for a historically flat, open plain. When the storm's center shifts away from Tornado Alley and into the hilly, wooded areas of the Mid-South or Midwest, the technological defense system is instantly blinded. The radar beam scans too high above the terrain, missing the impact of tornadoes at the lowest levels. The failure of the warning chain lies not only in technology, but in the gap in perception. A successful tornado warning must go through 4 levels. It must be issued, received, understood, and acted upon. We are failing at the last 2 levels. Sirens, born during the Cold War to warn farmers in open fields, are utterly useless to those sleeping soundly in double-glazed, soundproof homes. In this new risk zone, millions live in mobile homes or on shale-like ground, making tunneling impossible. The people here don't have a rehearsal culture. They didn't grow up with fear lurking under a blue sky. The deadliest vulnerability isn't in the clouds. It's in the brains of those who still think, this can't happen here. Because of radar blind spots and complex terrain, lead time, your only weapon for survival, cruelly shrinks from 15 minutes to just a few minutes. And when the time between the alarm and physical impact is measured in seconds, all billions of dollars worth of technology becomes meaningless. It all depends on whether the listener believes it or not, whether they understand it or not. And in those 3 short minutes, do they have anywhere to run? April 17th. Atmospheric science stopped being just numbers on screens. The new risk map officially landed in Cream, Wisconsin. When the tornado warning sounded in this rural upper Midwest, it didn't trigger a survival reflex. It triggered disbelief. Tornado? Here? In April? That was the first thought of thousands. This disaster wasn't measured by the 140-mile-per-hour winds of an EF3 tornado. It was measured by the exposure of those lying in its path. Wisconsin has basements, yes, but in decades of not facing severe tornadoes, those basements had become cluttered storage sheds, not storm cellars with survival gear like those in Oklahoma. Those living in flat-floored houses or mobile homes had absolutely no chance. And here's the most brutal truth that damage reports are unwilling to emphasize. The only saving Cream from becoming a giant morgue that day was that the storm struck during the day, when people were awake and could see the wall of clouds hurtling towards them. If it had arrived 10 hours later, at 2 a.m., the death toll would have permanently altered the town's history. Cream isn't the scariest story because it was hit. It's scary because it's a prototype. It shows exactly what happens when a community, unaccustomed to living on the front lines, is suddenly hit by a preemptive strike. And if Cream is a warning, there are other places across America that are a powder keg. As the center of extreme weather shifts southeastward, cutting through the Mississippi River Valley and the Mid-South, it encounters not just a new type of terrain, it collides with an extremely fragile social structure. Welcome to Dixie Alley, compound vulnerability. Unlike the open plains, tornadoes here are encased in thick, dark walls of rain, completely obscured by hills and forests. They are invisible to the human eye. But worst of all, a huge proportion of storms in Dixie Alley occur at night, when millions of people, with poverty rates higher than the national average, are fast asleep in flimsy matchbox-like mobile homes. No shelters, no reinforced structures, and no warning time. The media and insurance companies are caught up in the obsession with EF5 super tornadoes. But the 2026 scenario is proving a brutal principle of probability. A tornado doesn't need to be the strongest in history to create a historical tragedy. It doesn't need 200 miles per hour winds. It just needs a medium EF2 wind, straying into a community already burdened with too many disadvantages at 2 a.m. That's what makes the shift in the risk map more terrifying than any statistics. It doesn't just ask, where will the storms come from? It asks a far more chilling question. Where in America is it completely incapable of withstanding them? Tornadoes, massive hailstones, debris flying at 150 miles per hour. All of that is just the first layer of destruction. The second layer of destruction is more insidious, absent from real-time news reports, but no less devastating: the collapse of the recovery network. When tens of thousands of roofs are blown away and tens of thousands of cars are smashed by hail, the insurance market will react in the only way it's programmed: self-defense. Premiums will skyrocket. Deductibles will be pushed to unimaginable levels. Even giant insurance corporations will begin quietly withdrawing entirely from these new red zones. Look at the reality for American workers. In these areas, losing a car is not just losing property. Losing a car means losing the ability to get to work. Losing a roof means losing your last safe haven. A community with inadequate insurance coverage will be plunged into a crisis that lasts for years after the television cameras have left. Natural disasters don't just destroy physical property, they evaporate the capacity for recovery. But all the devastating economic bills we've just seen may only be the cost of the beginning, because history shows that the most dangerous phase of a tornado season is yet to come. In meteorology, April is just the warm-up. May is the real battleground. As the sun rises higher, the extreme temperature difference between the cold air masses from Canada and the warm, humid air masses from the Gulf of Mexico reaches its peak. The atmosphere is like a spring compressed beyond its physical limits. Observers are staring at the data points for spring 2026 and seeing the ghosts of historical super outbreaks like 1974 and 2011. We're not making sensational predictions that this year will definitely repeat that event, but science confirms the most dangerous physical pieces are in place. And here's the scariest part. America has experienced its longest EF5 drought in history, more than a decade without a single hurricane of that absolute magnitude. Audiences are beginning to underestimate the risk by only looking at the total number of storms. But the truth is, the sky doesn't need to break records in quantity to create disaster. Just a single storm, a single vortex gathering enough energy, striking a highly exposed metropolis that's just entered a new risk map, and history will change in 15 minutes. History doesn't tell us exactly what will happen tomorrow, but it makes one thing very clear. When familiar pieces begin to appear at the same time, the cost of delay increases exponentially. Tornadoes tearing through Wisconsin or the suffocating silence in Oklahoma are merely surface symptoms. America's real deadly disease lies deep beneath its concrete foundations, the maladaptation gap. Look at how we built this country. We spent decades and trillions of dollars pouring concrete, enacting land zoning regulations, training children to hide under tables, and constructing economic risk models, all based on a climate history that has officially been burned. The maps have changed, but our memories and reinforced concrete haven't. The atmosphere doesn't care about your zip code. It only obeys physics. A cruel rule is reshaping this era. Climate changes faster than buildings can withstand it. Buildings change faster than laws and policies always lag decades behind human understanding. Death doesn't need to be particularly clever. It just needs to find a way to slip through those deadly gaps. Warning systems, power grids, and even the way we plan our cities are all gasping for breath, desperately racing against the changing climate. The change isn't just about the coordinates where the tornado makes landfall. The most terrifying change is that we have to completely redefine what it truly means to be safe. No matter how much we argue and call it a shift, a redistribution, or an expansion of the risk zone, the cold reality beneath the surface remains unchanged. Millions of American families will go to sleep tonight under a sky they no longer understand. They are facing a threat for which they were unprepared, unequipped, and lack even the most basic survival skills. The map of danger has been updated by nature with its most brutal strokes, but humanity's defense system stubbornly continues to operate on an outdated version from the last century. When the map changes faster than collective memory, who will be the first to awaken and realize? And who will realize when it's too late?